Auburn basketball wins the SEC outright over the weekend, and they're not done despite locking things up.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Joining me as he does every single Monday, it is the Lindsay Crosby. You can find his stuff over at thebarnauburn.com as well as several other places. Lindsay, we'll talk about Auburn baseball. They keep winning. What an incredible weekend for Auburn there. KLS ran it was shocking to me, an incredibly shocking and impressive 40 at the combine. What does that mean for Eric Singleton and maybe the future of how Hugh Freeze and Auburn recruit that receiver position? But, I mean, we got to start with, it was a championship weekend for the Auburn Tigers. They secured a share of it by blitzing Kentucky, and then, of course, Alabama losing in pretty, dramatic fashion against the Tennessee Vols. And we've all seen the reactions of the team. I mean, just pure raw emotion, which is what makes one of the many things that makes this team so special. But it opens up this really interesting final week of the regular season where these games really don't matter much unless, maybe they need to win one to lock down the number one overall seed. I think people have different opinions on that. But I'm predicting, Lindsay, that we don't see this team really change that much based on how they handle business game to game. I don't think Bruce Pearl is going to call off the guys just because they've locked up the conference.
Yeah, I mean, this is something where what they have done has worked, and they've pretty much stuck with not exactly the same, but essentially the same game plan going into like all season. And now that you've won, you have two games that don't technically matter in the standings,
right?
But on the road at Texas A&M and then home for Alabama, games that do legitimately have some meaning to Auburn as a school. And then I think the other part of this too, to your point, is with the double bye locked up for Nashville, after they play Alabama on the 8th, they have so long to wait to play another game. Bruce is going to want to keep them fresh. If you were to rest your starters, to use NFL terminology, you'd be going 2 weeks between competitive games. They're going to give it their all in these next two outings.
Yeah, unless some of these guys are more injured than they're letting on, and some of these guys have been banged up. Broome left the game for a bit against Kentucky. It wasn't televised at that point, but and then he came back. So then it's like, okay, is that bad? Like, it probably isn't. If he came back in, the game wasn't close at the end of it. Denver left. Would he have come back in if it was a closer game? There are a few things that we just don't know. And so obviously if it's worse and we're letting on, maybe you do sit a Denver Jones. Chad Baker-Mazara has been banged up down the stretch, but is it worse than we think it is? My gut says no to it. But I guess that'll be our way of learning, right? Is okay, how many minutes does Denver play? How many minutes does Janai play? How many minutes does Chad play? Do they just want to see more minutes from Jaheim Hudson and Ja'Kai Howard just to say, hey, you guys, when your name has been called, you've been, reliable. And so we want to kind of give you some opportunities late, or maybe some of these walk-ons. Do they just kind of keep more guys in the rotation for a minute standpoint? Possibly. I just have a hard time seeing them bench people just because they have something locked up.
Yeah, I think the analogy here, to keep going back to the NFL, is like when you see a team will play its starters in the first half and then kind of go to backups in the second. It's not going to be like that, but it is going to be probably a little bit longer rotations for your second team guys coming in. Like you mentioned, some of the walk-ons getting a little more run than they typically would get. But I don't think they're going to completely hold these guys out unless it is, like you said, it is some sort of injury thing. Jones missed the last, 28 minutes of the game?
Yeah, he missed a lot of it, and Taha Pettiford stepped up in his stead, which was awesome. And I mean, he's so dynamic, especially if you're playing against a ranked team. But to me, yeah, it's just I don't think you change who you are now.
Yeah.
And we've seen Johni Broome in situations where it would have made sense to sit him. The Purdue game, maybe he was rushed back, but he wanted to play in that Tennessee game, and thank goodness he did. I just have a hard time seeing that mentality shift now because that's who these guys are. They want to beat everybody because they can beat everyone in college basketball. And I just don't think from a culture standpoint, you change what you're doing. That's just my gut on. I get the argument. I get the argument for resting. And if folks are hurt, you should absolutely use this opportunity. My gut says some of these aren't as bad. Like I don't think they're worse than what we think they are when you look at, some of these guys who have been reportedly banged up.
You talked about Auburn and being able to beat anybody. Can I give you just a really fun stat from this Kentucky game to show you how good Auburn was against Kentucky in their house?
Sure.
Kentucky had more turnovers than 3-point attempts. They had 18 turnovers and they shot 17 threes. Like if that doesn't tell you, there's also more.
Dominance.
Auburn's 3 guards that they played, because like you said, Pettiford had to step up a little bit there. The 3 guards combined for 72 points. Kentucky only had 78 as an entire roster.
That's crazy. And if you would have told me all of this was happening with Johni having arguably his worst game of the season, and with no Denver Jones, I would have been like, well, there's no way. There's no way. But this team just doesn't care. This team is like, okay, whoever we've got and whoever we don't got, we're going to beat whoever you put on the floor. And just from a mentality standpoint, I don't think you reward that style of thinking, that style of play culturally by not trying to beat Texas A&M and Alabama. That's just my gut feeling on all of this. So we'll hear from Bruce Pearl before they go to College Station to take on the Aggies. Of course, that's the last 8 o'clock tip of the season. Thank goodness. That'll be Tuesday night. Yeah, nobody wants that. Nobody wants that, especially a lot of you guys live on the East Coast. It's like, I don't know how in the world you are doing that throughout the season. But these guys are worth staying up for. I think they're still going to focus on giving you a good product. Now, if Auburn's winning by, double digits, 5 minutes left to go in the half or in the second half, like, does it change your rotation? Possibly. But I don't think you dramatically shift what you're doing. So we'll see. What do you think? Let us know in the comments down below or on socials or over at thebarnauburn.com. Because I get the argument to rest guys. I certainly get it. I'm predicting that that's not what Bruce Pearl does. That's just my guess. Lindsay, KLS shocked me over the weekend. Hats off to Keandre Lambert-Smith. What does this mean about Eric Singleton, if anything? That's next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Roy. Roy stands for Return on You. Lindsay, can you imagine just saying, hey, I want to give some money to receive exclusive content, but to support my favorite Auburn athlete, and then just mystery money comes from the sky and it's matched for any Auburn athlete? Can you imagine that?
I couldn't imagine trying to find a way to support Auburn athletics and not using Roy, because your money goes so much farther, up to $100 per fan, going to help these players.
That's right. So if you're excited about Eric Singleton, who we're about to talk about, and you're like, man, I want to support this guy, you could do that. You could do that through Roy. And for Auburn folks right now, this podcast, it's doubling the impact on your team with Roy. And they're matching all of the gifts given via the Roy app to Auburn athletes. So download the Roy app from your app store and start backing Auburn athletes the way they deserve, with transparency, trust, and real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite players. That is Roy, ROY. Just search it in your phone's app store. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. So, I mean, there are a lot of things that can happen within 5 seconds. Not Alabama inbounding a pass to Tennessee late in the game, but Keandre Lambert-Smith ran
really
a 40.
Sucks. Sorry, real quick. It sucks for Alabama that they had no timeouts left at that point in the game where they could have just called timeout and reset and tried again.
It's still the most, like, there was a lot of craziness from this weekend. That's the most shocking of all of it. Because, like, I think Nate Oates is a great coach. It's like, how did that happen? How in the world did that happen? That's what made that was more shocking to me than Tennessee making the 3 with 1 second left. I mean, it's just so, like, not who they are. It was crazy. Anyway, Keandre Lambert-Smith ran a 4.38 at the combine. And it's just our perception of KLS is this, like, solid route runner, mid-range, receiver. And we've talked so much about, okay, you lose KLS, and we all assume Eric Singleton, the top receiver transfer from Georgia Tech. Obviously, he picked Auburn. Like, he's going to fill that role. We all assume that part of the pitch was like, look at what we do with KLS. Can't wait to do it with you. But stylistically, they are different. They are different as far as how they were used, KLS at Penn State and then KLS at Auburn. And then obviously the way Eric Singleton was used at Georgia Tech. They're just different players. But now I'm wondering, like, I'm just shocked that KLS ran a sub 4.4. I love it. I think it's awesome. That's just not really how we used him. And so now I'm asking the questions because, like, I think I think Eric Singleton could do that. I think Malcolm Simmons could do that. And so now it's just like, how are they going to be used in this offense? I think it's a fun thought process here.
Yeah, it felt like from the outside looking in, right? I'm a baseball guy, but it felt like from the outside looking in that you had your guy in Cam Coleman that you believed by the end of the year could do anything. He could do anything on the field that you needed, any sort of route, and everybody else kind of had a role. This is how we use this guy. This is how we use this guy. And KLS maybe didn't have a chance to showcase all of that. And so I think a little small nagging concern that I kind of now have is, are we going to kind of pigeonhole Eric Singleton into a box of these are the things we want you to do versus you being able to do some of everything? The less predictable you are, the more dangerous you are as an offense. And I worry that we're not going to get to that point.
It's just, he was the seventh fastest receiver in the NFL draft this year. And it's like, I think KLS is extremely underrated throughout this draft process. And I mean, pretty much every list that you look at as far as like who won the NFL Combine, like he's in the receiver part. If he's not one, he's like top 3 on every single list I've looked at. And you just look at the guys that are known for speed, like Jordan Watkins of Ole Miss, Isaiah Bond of Texas. I mean, there's a lot of these. Luther Burden at Mizzou, like he was faster than all of these guys. And it's just kind of amazing to think about, because I think he's a better route runner than those guys too. And so, I mean, I think you worded it well. It's like, could he have done what we're expecting Eric Singleton to do if they wanted to use him differently? I don't know. But I do think this like begs the question of Malcolm Simmons and Eric Singleton on the field at the same time. Like, that's been something that's been discussed even when we didn't know if we were getting Singleton or not, but like they are similar. So how do they coexist at the same time? I don't know. And I don't think KLS's 40 time matters, but he is faster than what we thought. And like, he wasn't really used in that way. And so are they going to try to use Singleton in a more dynamic role? Is the offense going to change that much? Or are they just going to put him in KLS's role? I mean, I don't know. Like, I've been pretty consistent with saying, like, I like all of these guys. I like this roster a lot. Mm-hmm. I have concerns about the offensive scheme. And I don't know. Did we ever use that speed? I don't know. I mean, KLS had a really good year. There's no question about it. I'm just I'm just asking the question of, I don't know. I just very rarely like looked at KLS and was like, that dude's the fastest guy on the field. And in some cases, he probably was, which is crazy.
Can I play devil's advocate here on the offensive scheme for a second?
Please.
That was ridiculous. I knew you were okay with that. Yeah. Is it possible that some of the rigidity in the roles wasn't necessarily the preference of the scheme, but it was working around the quarterback? And by
yes.
that, I mean, in an ideal scenario, I feel like you would be okay with more varied route running from all of your outside receivers, having them do some of everything, right? Whether it's going deep, going across middle, short stuff, whatever.
Right.
But given what we all kind of have accepted was the limitations you had under center,
100%.
It's entirely possible that they had to say, hey, like, we need KLS to be predictable. We need what he's going to do to be predictable. We need this quarterback to know that, hey, on this side of the field, this dude is going to be working his way open in the short to intermediate game. And the goal was yards after the catch with him versus sending him deep, let him catch behind the line and run, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, which that's the best case scenario. And that's what we're all rooting for. Right. We're all hoping. I mean, there's this ongoing debate of like how much of it is quarterback from a year ago or 2 years ago, last 2 seasons, and how much of it is the scheme. The scheme's worked other places. The scheme made, Malik Willis an NFL quarterback. The scheme was super competitive at Ole Miss and beat Nick Saban multiple times.
And with those wide receivers, they did more dynamic things. And so how much of that is those wide receivers and how much of that is the quarterback that was throwing to them?
Yeah, was KLS just early in this rebuild? And it's like, I mean, he had a great season, one of the best seasons in Auburn history.
Right.
But if he would have come this year or next year, like after, Hugh Freeze has his guys in and Jackson or Deuce or whoever, could he have had a 1,300-yard season? I don't know. I think that I'm glad that you went that route with it because I agree. And just for full conversation here, he was targeted 18 times beyond 20 yards. He had 9 catches, 3 touchdowns. So take that for what it's worth. He did have a drop on deep passes, and then 2 of those deep passes where he was targeted did result in interceptions. So once again, like a lot of that, though, how much of that is him? You can only chart these things certain ways. So
before we get out of this segment, I do want to also point out Eugene Asante, second best 40-yard dash time among linebackers, 4:48, 21 reps on the bench, 4th among linebackers, 10-yard split of 152, best among all linebackers.
I mean, he's seen as one of the most athletic linebackers in the draft after this weekend. Hats off to Eugene.
There were some mock drafts and some grades and projections that had both of these guys late round, if not undrafted free agents. And I do think both of these guys made themselves some money. Yeah, they're absolutely drafted now on the physical talents. And your hope is that you can make enough adjustments to their game and develop them just a little bit more where they can be contributors. So they made some money here.
I wish we had KLS for another year. Man, I wish we had him one more year. He was
Are we sure he wasn't a JUCO guy for a year? We can Diego Pavia him. Was Penn State JUCO worthy for a year?
NCAA. Just sue the NCAA. They'll give you more eligibility. We've seen this before.
They are terrified of all of that right now.
Yeah, just come on. No, KLS. I'm so pumped for him. And excited to see what he's able to do at the next level. Auburn baseball just keeps on winning. What a crazy weekend for Butch Thompson and the guys. Let's jump into that next. Right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. And right now at FanDuel, you can bet on who will win the SEC. Oh, wait, no, you can't. They've taken that off the board because the Tigers did it. But you can bet on them to win the national championship, which they are leading the way when it comes to national championship odds at plus 330. You also can bet on them to reach the Final Four. Those odds are minus 160, which is insane. which is insane. So head over to FanDuel right now. You can nail your first $5 bet. You get $150 in bonus bets if you do that. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com to join and get your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Lindsay Crosby, Butch Thompson's guys, they keep on winning. I mean, we had this discussion last week about, okay, they're going to Arlington to play in this tournament, and they're going to have their hands full. Ohio State, Oregon State.
Number 8 in the country, Oregon State.
Baylor. Auburn goes 3-0. They win the dang thing. We were like, hey, 2-1, we'll be happy. Let's see what happens. They win the dang thing.
And not only did they win the dang thing, they run rule Ohio State 13-0 in 7 innings. They take Oregon State. They hold them off late 8-7. And then Baylor, they shut the door 7-4. Like, it wasn't, and like the performances they got in some of these games were dominant. Like Sam Dutton on Friday night, 6 innings, 2 hits, no runs, no walks, 9 strikeouts. Auburn used 2 pitchers in that game. That's it.
They named a ranch after him.
So somebody was telling me that he has like property and he has notoriety. He's known. And I'm like, I'm just amazed that Auburn, like, shout out to Octavius Spencer for being the Hollywood connection to get him to transfer from LSU to Auburn.
That's
by
right.
Promising him the television show.
Yeah.
Shout out to Octavius Spencer. That's an IL too, baby.
Yeah. For some reason, everybody wants to take your family's ranch. And he's like, no, we're not doing it. We're not doing that. We're going to mow down opposing batters. Awesome stuff.
Yeah. And he was a reliever at LSU last year.
What was more impressive in your mind? Run ruling Ohio State 13-0 or beating Oregon State 8-7? And I mean, by far I'm giving my answer away, but by far the most impressive win of the season so far.
I'm going to say beating Oregon State. And I think it's because that's the first time that you've really gotten that kind of test. And that late push. Oregon State
SEC caliber team, right?
Oh, yeah. Top 10 team in the country.
Yeah.
If folks will remember, that last time we went to Omaha, we got there by going to Oregon State and beating them 2 out of 3 games.
Do we own Oregon State? People are asking.
I believe that the mayor of Beavertown, I don't know what it's called where they play. Corvallis, thank you. I believe the mayor of Corvallis is actually Chris Rembert.
Okay.
He went 2 for 4 with a homer and 4 RBI in that game. He's the mayor of Beavertown. Speaking of, if you want all of the fun little stats from these games, the Bar in Auburn, I've been dropping. These are in the MLB Park, so I've gotten the StatCast numbers. Some fun little nuggets we're dropping over there. Go check that out.
Yeah, thebarnauburn.com. Sign up right now.
But I feel like I need to apologize to listeners of this show a little bit.
Okay.
Because I tend to do this thing where I like to maybe undersell a little bit. I would rather underpromise and overdeliver, right? And so I think that I maybe got some things wrong about this baseball team that I need to correct the record on if I can have 3 or 4 minutes here.
Go ahead.
Okay. The first thing is, and I told everybody, I thought the strength of this team was the offense. And that is correct. I thought the strength of this team was the offense. They've got like 4 run rule victories in the first couple weeks of the season.
They scored 28 runs this weekend, and they were 2 innings short. Yeah.
But I don't think that I expected this from the entire lineup, right? Like I knew Ike Irish, Cooper McMurray, these veterans were going to be good, right? You're Cade Ballou. You brought in some guys like an Eric Snow, Bristol Carter, whatever. And then I expected one of these freshmen to be good. Maybe Bub Terrell, maybe Chris Rembert, maybe Chase Fralick. They'd have their moments or whatever. All 3 of those guys, all 3 of those freshmen look like players you cannot take out of the lineup right now. Mm-hmm. They're batting at the bottom of the order. They're like your 6, 7, and 8 hitters. and they just continue to produce. Chris Rembert hit multiple home runs this weekend. I want to say he drove in somewhere between like 8 and 23 batters over the course of the weekend. Just nuts.
Rembert specifically, like he strikes me more. He almost seems more like a transfer portal edition than a kid you got from high school, you know?
He's so freaking good so early. And the thing, like all three of these
poised and confident. Like, it doesn't seem like he's been playing college baseball for 5 minutes.
He absolutely, like, he is not daunted by any of these pitchers that they face. The velocity, he doesn't care. You got a good breaking ball, whatever. And I'm at the point where I don't understand how you take any of these guys out.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the first area where I kind of misled the listeners a little bit, right? I knew the offense would be good. I didn't know 1 through 9 they would be this deep and solid. I thought you'd have your ebbs and flows. And then the other area was I was a little concerned about the pitching staff. And I think that was because I didn't know if you would find a weekend anchor guy. Sam Dutton absolutely looks like he is that weekend anchor guy. I knew he was adding pitches when he was converting from a reliever at LSU to a starter at Auburn. They gave him a couple pitches. He was a 2-pitch guy as a reliever. That's all you need. You need more than that to be a starter. That first start of his didn't really help because he was kind of sticking with that 2-pitch reliever mix and he was having some trouble, but he's been very good. We saw that this weekend. And then the new additions to the pen, whether or just the holdovers. Cam Tilley has been phenomenal, but you've got guys like a Jet Johnston who have stepped up. A lot of these freshmen, Christian Chatterton, I didn't know if he could be a weekend starter right away as a true freshman, but he's started 3 games on the weekend. We haven't lost any of those. And so the talent was there. I knew the talent was on the pitching staff. I didn't think they could come together this quickly and figure out the roles and be competitive against Power 5 caliber opponents as quickly as they were. The weekend wasn't perfect. They never are. But Auburn won all 3 games. They figured out Ryan Hetzler can go in there and close out a game.
Yeah.
They figured out which of these upperclassmen, like which of these arms, whether it's a Cam Tilley coming out there and just racking up whiffs. Carson Myers gave him 2 scoreless innings of relief. Like, they've got a ton of dudes and more dudes on the pitching staff than maybe I realized or listeners know about going into the season. So that's on me. But in the meantime, absolutely make sure you're supporting these guys. You're going by the ballpark because I have the feeling this could be one of those special kind of seasons. When we look back on it in July or something, we could say, hey, like all of the stuff that's happened to Auburn, right? The personal tragedy with Cade Billou and his mother and all of that stuff. Look what it's done to this team. Look how this team has rallied, has come together as a unit, and has been crushing it. And to his credit, my co-host on the Barn Baseball Show, Sonny DeShera, said this exact thing was likely to happen. Yeah. Shout out to Sonny. He's a professional ball player for a reason, folks. He knows ball.
Yeah, he does know ball. And you can listen to him with Lindsay and Brad Law several times a week. So the Tigers go to UAB on Tuesday. Of course, that's in Birmingham. And then just quickly, kind of what do we know about Old Dominion this weekend?
There's some connections with Cooper McMurray here. His family's a big Old Dominion guys. Another team that's expected to be one of the best teams in their conference. So another significant test. I'm still going to call Auburn 2 out of 3 simply because I don't want to say that they're going to win them all. But I do, at this point, it's hard to imagine them losing at all. And that's your final tune-up before conference play, right? The next week, Vanderbilt's in town. But Old Dominion has had a lot of close games. They're 3-7. But they lost to Georgia Tech. One of those games was like a 1-run game, right? Like they've come so close to winning so many of these games. So a good squad, but one that you can get, and you should win at least 2 out of these 3, if not a sweep. Right.
Lindsay, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. Again, thebarnauburn.com for all the baseball nugs. The Barn Baseball Show is that. If you're a Atlanta Braves fan, bravestoday.com. We got a ton of stuff going on over there. And check it out.
Please like the video. Please subscribe if you're tuning in on audio. Please subscribe and leave us a review. It helps the show out a ton. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.